So today we begin with Unit 2 of The Fortune Teller by Carol Chopek. In Unit 1, we were introduced to the main character, that is the fortune teller, Mrs. Edith Myers, and the judge, Mr. Kelly JP. In Unit 2, we are told a little bit more about Mrs. Meyer, who is presented as a respectable person, but she comes under the notice of Detective Inspector McLeary. Now, this is another important character. Now, from the conversation that Mr. McLeary has with his wife, we come to know that he is very curious to know about Mrs. Myers. He can't seem to take her out of his head, and he shares this information with his wife and tells her that he's curious to know how Mrs. Meyer makes her living. Now, Mrs. Meyer seems to have a very lavish lifestyle, and he's curious to know that how come she sends her servant for asparagus, which is a very expensive vegetable in the month of February. Also, he is curious to know how come she has 12 to 20 visitors every single day visiting her. And though he knows that Mrs. Meyer is a fortune teller, but he seems to harbor a suspicion that perhaps this fortune telling is a kind of a garb or a disguise for some illegal activities that Mrs. Meyer might be into, like white slave traffic. Now, white slave traffic means prostitution, or espionage, which means spying. So, this is Inspector Detective McLeary's suspicions about Mrs. Meyer, and he tells his wife that he would like to get to the bottom of this. So, here ends your Unit 2. Now, Unit 3 begins with Mrs. McLear telling her husband, Bob McLeary, that she would like to help him find out or unravel more about Mrs. Meyer. So she tells him to leave this business to her. The next day, Mrs. McLeary dresses up in a very girlish way. She doesn't wear her wedding ring, and she puts on a very scared, shy, timid kind of a look on her face, and she goes to visit Mrs. Meyer. So, after a long wait, Mrs. Meyer eventually opens the door to Mrs. McLeary, and she examines or maybe gives her a thorough inspection from her top of her head to the tip of her toes, and asks her how she can be of help to Mrs. McLear. Mrs. McLear, who is in a kind of a disguise, like a little shy, timid girl, she stammers and tells Mrs. Meyer that since the next day is her 20th birthday, she was very anxious to know about her future. Mrs. Meyer asks her her name and picks up a pack of cards, which she energetically begins to shuffle. Since she's a fortune teller, she picks up those cards and starts shuffling them, and in the process would eventually ask Mrs. McLeary to pick up some cards from that pack. So here ends your unit 3. We'll continue with unit 4 the next time.